All right, thank you everybody for being here today. My name is Kyle. I'm with the City of Spokane Water Department and the WaterWise program, and I also run the Spokanescape program. And today we are super lucky to have Doug here with Second Nature Landscaping.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Doug, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for your business?
Yeah. Well, I've been in Spokane for about 3 years. I recently moved from Montana, from Bozeman, and back there, I got started in my career doing habitat restoration. So working with native plants, rivers and wetlands, earth moving, dealing with irrigation, that kind of thing. And those were large-scale projects. And when I moved to Spokane, I just shrunk it all down into the size of a city lot and transitioned over to landscaping.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, so a little bit of heavy equipment experience, really it transitioned over.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So what's your favorite part about doing Spokane Skate Projects?
I love this program. So, you know, it really ties in with my background and my history. And when I found out about this, it's a relatively new program. There are other places that have been doing it for a long time and are successful. And I love the fact that it's just getting going here and that it's catching on. I think that's the coolest thing, is that it is catching on. And I like that it's a voluntary program. So people truly want to change the way their yard's structured from, you know, the status quo of, you know, the 50s and having a lawn and
Right,
you know,
right.
2 trees,
Yeah.
to removing the lawn and completely redoing it with, you know, conservation-minded landscaping.
Right. Yeah, I see a lot of folks that move into Spokane from out of the area. You know, they may be from California or the desert Southwest, and they move in and buy a house that's just solid lawn, and they're like, God, I just can't do this. It's got to go. So can you give me some advice on what I got to do to get rid of all this lawn, because I'm just not comfortable putting all this water on it. And you know, so that's one of the benefits of having you know, folks move in from out of the area with some different environmentally minded attitudes. So that's great to see. So what do you love? What do you love about living in Spokane and gardening in Spokane?
Yeah, well, Spokane is a great sized city. You get everything you need in a city, and it's really close to nature too. So it's, you know, 10, 15 minutes to get out of town, or, you know, to a trail, or, you know, we go mountain biking or hiking, and we go to the water and all that stuff. And so it's close to nature.
Yeah.
And that's important to us.
Yeah.
And gardening, well, you know, we moved from Montana, and so Montana is at least Bozeman, it's a much colder climate.
Right.
And I mean, you can grow so much more here. The
Right.
growing season is
Yeah.
longer. It doesn't get nearly as cold, so you can grow a greater variety of plants.
Yeah.
And there's a real spring and a real fall.
Exactly.
You know, I came from a place where spring was just a shoulder season, and
Right.
fall was too. And here the spring just goes on and develops, and I mean, all the blooms just happen one after the other. It's like fireworks in the yard. It's great.
Well, with this wet spring this year, it's been just awesome seeing the wildflowers just like drag on and on and on. It's just been so cool. Where, like, you know, last year the hot spring, it just put a stop to it really fast. So it's been a super cool wet spring. So that's it's nice to see. So what continues to draw you to sustainable gardening practices? Why do you love to go out and help people convert their lawns over to sustainability?
Well, conservation is really close to my heart. It always has been. So that's the main thing. And I mean, I guess a close second is the fact that when you use native plants and drought-tolerant plants, it doesn't have to look like the forest. It can, and that's a cool style.
Right.
But it can look really well put together. It can, I mean, especially if you have a plan to start with, you know, it can look like a well-landscaped yard, and you can add other features to it. And I think a lot of people are afraid of using native plants A lot of nurseries don't really delve into that world.
Right. People want the big, flashy, showy plants, you know.
Yeah.
But native plants can also be flashy and showy if you just do a little research and find out which ones work well in your landscape, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's. I mean, like lupin is a great example. That if you can go to the nursery and there are a ton of varieties of lupin.
Yeah.
And there's some really cool varieties with beautiful showy flowers. But the native lupin is also really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And so, yeah.
And that's what our native wildlife is adapted to, right? Over millennia, like local birds and bees are like, oh, this is my native lupin, and you plant some exotic one, and they're maybe like, whoa, I don't know what to do with this thing.
Well, yeah, it's right, and they're also more susceptible to disease, and so, or aphids and that kind of thing. I mean, we planted a big showy lupin, and it was gorgeous, and it just got demolished by the aphids.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh, interesting.
So it's harder to garden with ornamentals. They're more work.
Yeah. Now aphids got the best of me in my garden. I gave up on cabbage and Brussels sprouts and all that because
Brussels sprouts are tough.
the aphids are just like, okay, you win. I'm not planting those varieties anymore. Yeah. Yeah. So, well, can you tell us about the big conversions and updates you've made to front yards that have had a lasting impact, or certain ones that have been a unique project in your mind?
Yeah. So, let's see. The ones that have the most impact, I think, are the ones where the owner really takes a lot of responsibility and continues to oversee that gardening into the future. Right. So, native landscapes and drought tolerant landscapes and low water, they often do require a lot less work, but they still require some work. Right. And so it's an important discussion to have with people that you do still need to keep up with this and take care of it. Right. And so, yeah.
No, I think that's a really important point, is to educate homeowners on, nothing is maintenance free. If you don't like mowing your lawn, you may not like pulling weeds either, but it's got to be done. If you don't mow your lawn, it's going to, look like heck. And if you don't pull your weeds, it's, your neighbors may not appreciate it either. So I think that continuing education when you get finished with the project is great. And I'd like to add, as well as also educating the homeowner on how they may want to set up an irrigation timer, as far as like what the future may look like. As you may want to put a little extra water on it this year and maybe taper off next year, and then maybe the year after that it's like only in the hottest part of the summer, right? So I think that's great as a landscape installer to really educate the homeowner on what they can expect and what they're going to have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Is weeding part of it? Do you have to weed?
I think you do have to weed. Yeah. But at my house, I was, before I had this position, I put in a Spokane Skate Project at my house because I live in the middle of a block and I have stairs that go down to my grass on the front strip. I would have to push the lawnmower around the block or carry it down my stairs. and I would always have the water on all the time because it was between the sidewalk and the street, and it would just be like weeds and bone dry all the time, and it just got so old to just, maintain it, and it just looked terrible all the time. And so I thought, I'm just going to tear all this out, and I'm going to put down, bark mulch and native plants and some small conifer trees. And man, the tree now, I planted it, it was this tall, and it's 25 feet tall now. And it's pretty amazing just watching things grow over the years. So for me, I get home from work and I get out of my car and I pluck a few leaves or a few weeds out here and there. And I just kind of make it a little daily habit instead of like a Sunday afternoon thing. Like, oh man, I got to, put some time aside and go pull weeds. I just do it a little bit here and there. So, and very important to get pull those weeds before they go to seed and create a lot more weeds. So, yeah, it's good to stay on top of things for sure.
Well, once you get that layer of mulch in, it's so much easier to pull the weeds too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like pulling weeds out of grass, or you really got to dig in there. If the weed seed takes hold in the mulch, I mean, it just comes right out.
Yeah. And for some reason this year, those the maple seeds have just been nuts. And I don't know if it's just my house. It seems like I've been around town, but looking at other people's landscapes, it's like, what is it about this year, or maybe last fall, that just had these maple seeds just go nuts? Because there was just hundreds of them by my street side, and once you get them, then you're probably pretty good till next spring. But yeah, that's been a pretty good battle for me to get rid of all those. So that and Oregon grape seems to be pretty consistent. Coming back.
Oregon grape is tenacious, and
definitely.
those maple leaves or maple seeds are pretty successful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what do you have any tips about what is your favorite style of irrigation to do on a project for a Spokanescape style project?
Yeah, that's a good question. The style I like to use is basically a type of drip setup where you use a solid drip tube and then you punch in emitters into that drip tube, as opposed to laying out like a grid of drip line, like Netafim or Tech Line.
Right.
If you put a single emitter to each plant, I mean, you're saving a crazy amount of water. Whereas if you set the grid out, you're watering the entire area. Is really the goal of that.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a few landscape contractors in town that just they get rid of the spray heads, but then they just put a solid grid of drip, inline drip, and you're still watering everything. And the nice thing about what you're saying was if you have individual drip emitters to each plant, that's the only thing that's getting watered, and everything else is bone dry, and then therefore it's a less inviting environment to a lot of the weeds that are going to come in. So it's just if you keep everything just kind of bone dry, you're going to have a lot less of a problem. So yeah,
that's right. You're going to see less of a water bill.
Yeah. Yeah, and I typically, it probably depends on the run, but I try to run all my drip irrigation at like 40 psi with a filter in there just to keep the debris out of the heads.
Those two things are crucial.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You're gonna, if you winterize your system and you don't have a pressure regulator, you're gonna blow those drip emitters off the ends.
Right. Yeah.
And the filter, it's depending on what your water looks like, it's important to clean that.
Yeah, and I try to make it like a seasonal habit. Like I started up in the spring, I pull out that filter, knock any sand out of it, and then I turn everything on and just kind of walk around to each plant, make sure emitters are running, they didn't get broke or stepped on over winter or something like that, and just kind of make it an annual practice.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's not as much of an issue in town as it is, say, on a private well.
Oh, if you had a well. Yeah,
but a lot of people with wells, they might have really iron-rich water. Or, I have one client that she probably needs to clean the filter on her drip system, every month, as opposed to,
really?
I mean, you can see it and it's just caked with, with debris. So it just really depends.
Right. Do you typically do most of your jobs in city of Spokane, or do you venture out a bit?
I'd say about half of my work is in Spokane, a third in the valley, and about a third in the country.
Okay. Yeah.
That didn't add up. We can come back to that math later.
Sounds like my kind of math. Yeah. Well, we'd love to hear any questions we had from anybody in the audience. If you want to send in any questions, Doug and I would love to answer some. So, yeah. Okay, so somebody was curious, wondering about, where would you recommend starting with the project, Doug? What would be step one?
Yeah, I'd say step one would be coming up with a plan. It's really important to figure out what you want before you put that first shovel in the ground. And there's several components of a plan. The figuring out what style you want is really important. I mean, do you want a densely planted cottage garden, or are you looking for extremely low maintenance and just a tree here and a shrub there?
Right.
Are you going for a rock garden? So the style is important, and that style is really going to dictate what other types of things you put in the garden. Do you want boulders for accent? Do you want? Do you need edging to keep part of the rest of your lawn from creeping into the water-wise lawn? Let's see, and those questions about plants and the other stuff are going to dictate your irrigation, which is, it's important to think through your irrigation so you don't have to go back and fix stuff later. It's easier to get it right the first time, and it's worth that time. Do you have any thoughts?
So no, I was just going to ask you, do you typically, do you do the design work yourself, or do you typically work with a partner that does some of the design work, or where do you normally start with that?
Yeah, I'll do a little design work, but if it's really only if it's a small project, like if somebody's doing wants to plant a few plants and really already has a really good idea of what they want. For the most part, I tend to refer people to some partners. I work with Seed to Shade Nursery. I work with Desert Jewels Nursery, and those two the most. And they're great. I mean, both of those guys. They previously had careers in biology and related sciences, and they started nurseries, and they exclusively grow native plants, and they design, and so they focus on that stuff, and I lean on them for that.
Right. Well, that's got to be nice to be able to just kind of focus on what you need to do, and have somebody else focus on the plants and source those and hopefully deliver, and let you just focus on the groundwork. Right.
It's important to play to your strength.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yep. Well, where did so as you moved to Spokane, how did you first hear about the Spokanescape program?
Yeah, I worked at the conservation district for a couple of years, and that's where I heard about it. And then after I started my own shop, I think I just gave it a quick Google, and that popped right up, and read through this and became a contractor for you. So
great. Do you feel, or what percentage of jobs do you feel like are maybe Spokanescape worthy, or do you feel that maybe some of them don't quite qualify and they just kind of go on their own? So what percentage of those projects do you think get rebates?
Well, we already covered that I'm not very good with percentages, so
Right.
No. Let's see. Is the question what percentage of projects in this realm of native and drought tolerant actually qualify for Spokanescape?
That you do.
It might be about 50-50.
Yeah.
There are very often people that want to do something related or drought tolerant, but just don't quite meet the qualifications.
Right.
And they don't, and some people don't even want to deal with the rebate. There are people that too, where they just want to do it, but they don't want to deal with the paperwork, and it's actually extremely easy paperwork.
That's a good point, and it's worth the money.
It's got to be hands down the easiest government paperwork I've ever dealt with.
That's great to hear.
I used to work for the government.
Right.
I've dealt with a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, like one example was somebody wanted to tear out their lawn, but they didn't want to plant anything. They just wanted mulch, and she was going to go back and plant a couple things later. But we want to be planting something to take up some of that space, and that's part of the program, and it's important.
Yeah, and it's a great way to provide some much needed habitat for our pollinators, and also, beautify that property and add some, curb appeal, and, essentially bring up your home value too. I mean, if I was going to look at buying a home and they had a solid rock front yard or tons of beautiful plants, I mean, it would be a no-brainer for me, which what I would prefer. So, yeah, I think it's pretty important to put in a lot of nice plants that are drought tolerant and make something look nice if you're going to replace all that grass. So. Well, what do you wish people knew about drought tolerant landscaping in general, or do you feel like that there's maybe some misconceptions about it, as far as just the type of work you do with drought tolerance?
Well, the first thing is that I think a lot of gardeners might really not be all that interested in native plants in general. And I think there's just such a variety of native and drought tolerant plants that are really cool. And the fact that they're, like you talked about, they're already really closely tied with our native pollinators and so forth, and the wildlife. I think it's important to say again that native plants are hardy. You know, when we selectively breed plants for a showy flower or a certain, I don't know, amount of shade or whatever, there are unintended consequences of that, and a lot of times we breed plants to be less hardy when we do that. So native plants are hardy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It makes me think of, like, you know, different exotic species of, you know, fruit trees and things like that. You know, they're more susceptible to pests and they require more chemicals and things like that. You know, which also might kind of go along with a lot of you know, lawns that require tons of water and pesticides to keep them looking healthy as well. Yeah. So if I was, so a question, if I was planning to xeriscape my lawn, you know, and what would be the best time for me to get that work started?
So remove the lawn and xeriscape.
Yep.
To get it started, well, right now.
Yeah, is there a best time of the year? I mean, so talking about, you know, I guess you can remove your lawn any time of the year, but you're going to want to get some mulch back over that to reduce weed problems. And then, you know, when would be the best time to plant?
Fall.
The fall is the best time?
Yeah, when, and a close second is spring. When you plant in the fall, especially when you plant when your plants are dormant, so when the leaves have fallen off, it's less of a shock to the plant, and then it benefits from all that moisture, all the snow that they get in the wintertime. And so it's free water for the plant.
Right.
And so you get all that moisture up until, you know, really the next summer.
Right. Yeah, and it could help all that soil settle in and all that, instead of maybe if you plant it in the spring, it may be a wet week, but who knows what next week's going to bring, right? So it might be like, oh, it's a nice cool week, the plant's happy, and then 110 degrees next week. Plant's not so happy anymore.
Spring is still a good time to plant, but you never know.
Right.
I mean, last year we had 100+ day, you know, or week in June, right? So, the reason I jokingly said right now is because of that planning, though, right? You don't want to just rip out the lawn and then go, what am I going to do now?
Right. Yep.
And also, if you're looking to find a contractor, we're pretty busy, you know, and so, you know, I mean, right now I'm booked part of the way through the fall, so just start thinking about it.
Yep, never too late to get the ball rolling on those projects. Yeah. So a question we had is, what tips do you have for people launching into their own Spokanescape project?
So a do-it-yourself?
Yeah, a do-it-yourself project. What would be a tip that you'd give a homeowner just going out on that adventure right now?
YouTube and Google are your friend. You can find a lot of really good information there. I mean, you have to have a good filter. You know, be able to suss out what may not be a good advice, but use your best judgment. But you can learn so much from YouTube. I mean, there are guys that do what I do, and they spend a lot of their time, you know, setting up shots on site and show you exactly how to do it.
Right.
So that's one thing. When you're doing irrigation, it's really important to first figure out what your flow is and what your pressure is. So that's a really basic one. You know, to figure out your flow, I do a bucket test. So I take a 5-gallon bucket and turn on the spigot and figure out how long it takes to fill 5 gallons of water. And that, you know, your answer is going to be in gallons per minute. So you got a 5-gallon bucket and you fill it for a minute, or fill it all the way to the top. You do have to figure out where the 5-gallon mark is on that bucket, because they're all a little different.
Yeah.
To figure out your pressure, you do need a little pressure gauge. They cost about $10.
Yeah, I definitely use those. Those are great. Yeah, they're the ones that just screw onto your spigot and it just tells you 75 psi or whatever, and that'll give you a good calculation for setting up your drip system, and even if sprinkler systems as well, if you're doing that. Yeah.
So the reason that's important is that there's not an endless flow of water. You can't just continue to put emitters or spray heads onto an irrigation zone. It helps you you know, if you just add up the gallons per minute on each emitter and up to your gallons per minute that you have coming out of your house, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the maximum you can put on a zone.
Right. Yeah, we have some great tips in our guidebook about how, you know, drip irrigation basics, like how many heads you can put on a zone, how much gallons per minute you can put on a half-inch drip line, and things like that. So the Spokanescape guidebook is a great additional resource that we worked really hard on to try to answer some of the questions for folks to make it easier for them as they go along. Local nurseries can be great resources for just what plants work well in the region. That's pretty helpful. Of course, there's always your county extension and master gardeners, always happy to help as well.
Videos.
And our new DIY videos that are coming out today.
So you don't have to filter out results on YouTube.
That's right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Cool. Can't wait to check those out.
Yeah, I know it's been it was a fun project, and yeah, I'm glad the editing people did their job looking through all that, because I know I was probably not an easy customer going through that process, but I had a lot of fun doing it. So, and I always love getting out and doing the hard work and you know, getting dirty doing that stuff. So that was a lot of fun.
Can I jump in here?
Of course.
There are two more resources that I'd recommend to people getting into a project themselves. One is your local rental company. So if you're looking to tear out your lawn, I would recommend investing in either a dingo or a sod cutter or something like that to help you. Sod is heavy, and those rental companies are really knowledgeable. They can help guide you to the right piece of equipment. They have really basic pieces of equipment, and they have much bigger pieces of equipment. So those guys are really helpful, and they know their stuff. And the other one is the landscape supply companies. You know, the Witkoff's or Circle M, or if you're on the South Hill, Barn and Blossom sells things in bulk. Right, so those guys, they know their materials. If you're looking for mulch or gravel or soil or sand or whatever it is, they know their stuff too.
Yep, definitely. And so to clarify, or to give some context, those dingoes are they're kind of like a walk behind bobcat, right? And you can fit them in pretty small spots.
Yeah.
So
Some
you
of
don't
them
have to
can fit through fences.
Right, yeah, you don't have to
gates.
learn how to run the big bobcat equipment. You can just, you know, get those things into your backyard or your side yard into spots that you couldn't get a big piece of equipment in. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
those are great. We used those last year, and you know, for people that haven't ran that stuff either, it's pretty quick learning curve on those. They're not too difficult to run. So
It is, yeah. If you can run a Pac-Man machine, you know, an arcade game,
yeah, right.
It's just, they're pretty simple.
Yeah.
One control over here and another one with the other hand.
Yeah. So another question we had is, what is the best alternative to bags of mulch? You know, going and buying your 50-pound bags of mulch. How can people get some great bark that they don't have to buy all these individual plastic bags?
Right. That's those landscape supply companies, Circle M, Witkoff's, Barn and Blossom. They sell it by the cubic yard, and they deliver, or they can load up your pickup truck or whatever it is. So what was I going to say? The math is pretty simple. You know, if you have a length and a width of your yard, and you figure you want 3 inches, you know, you multiply those 3, and then divide your cubic feet by 27, and you got your cubic yards.
Yeah, one thing I encourage people to do too, if they're doing a DIY project, is there's a great resource out there called getchipdrop.com, and you can get on. It's local arborists doing tree trimming projects, and instead of them taking their load out to like Graham facility, they will deliver it to your house for a small donation. And sometimes, you know, you get what you get. They're not going to come back and pick it up if you're like, oh, I didn't want that. They're like, sorry, you asked for it, you get it. But one thing I encourage people to do is you can put down some of those arborist chips, and to get your depth for your, you know, kind of your weed barrier for the mulch, and then you can put something nicer as a top dressing on if you wanted to like put some beauty bark on top or something like that, because then you're just really saving on the quantity of your bark that you have to actually purchase.
That's a great idea.
So I encourage people to do that, and hopefully that's a money saver for folks.
Why didn't you tell me to do that? It's too late.
Yeah, you got the little blow around stuff. Yeah. Yeah, so we did it at Kristen's house is we had a company come in that blows the bark on, right? Saves you a ton of labor. They do all the work. And that could be a great resource if somebody doesn't want to physically push the wheelbarrows around their yard and maybe they're not healthy enough to move all that bark. But you can definitely pay somebody to come in and put it where you want it, and you just pay a little bit more for that.
Or if you need it right away.
Or if you need it right away. That's right. Yeah. What are your hopes for the Spokanescape program in the future? Or is that a question for me or for Doug? Well, for me, I mean, I have a ton of fun doing it, and I love talking to people in the community, going to different community events, and meeting homeowners. And that's the great part about my job is I go to people's houses and they're happy to see me, and everybody's always so nice. And so I love that. I hope it continues to expand and we can get more lawn removed around the city and definitely save some money or save some water by not watering all those lawns. And me and my coworker Will were talking about, it's like been 40 a summer, then 50 a summer, 60 a summer, 70 projects a summer, and all that's going to continue to add up. Pretty soon we're going to have 800 Spokanescape projects that have been credited through the city, and over time that's going to make a huge impact. And plus just neighbors seeing neighbors doing that type of work and things like that. So no, I love to see it out there, and it's fun to drive around town and see just alternative landscapes besides the good old-fashioned green lawn. So it's been really, really fun to see things changing around town.
I agree. Yeah. I hope, I don't know how your funding works, but I hope it continues to get funded. It's so cool to see a city just really start to take off in this realm of drought tolerant and water conservation landscapes. They look great, so the more, like you said, the more there are out there, the more neighbors are going to admire it, and the more connected habitat we get. I mean, urban habitat is kind of few and far between, especially when when people are spraying a lot on their lawns. That's really not good for the beneficial wildlife out there. But the more people do this, the closer they are to another neighbor who has more to offer in terms of flowers and habitat. So
definitely, and it made me think of. I really want to encourage people out there to, if you do a Spokanescape or a drought tolerant landscape, let's keep the good image going and take care of those landscapes. Keep pulling the weeds. Keep trimming things, looking nice. Let's give drought tolerant landscaping a good name in the city instead of something for people to gripe about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on that note, there are Spokanescape certified gardening companies. And what I'm recommending to people at the end of the project, that for the client that really wants a very low maintenance yard, it's still important to do that gardening like you're talking about. And so what I'm telling people is, once, twice a year, pay a gardener to come out and focus on the important things. And you're still going to end up spending a lot less than paying somebody to mow your lawn every week, and then paying the spray guys to spray your lawn, and all of that stuff that needs to happen, and aerating and all that whatnot. So
yeah, Amy Dutton from Garden Up Landscaping has got quite a crew that I know she goes around town and puts a lot of time in. My mom uses her with her landscape because my mom's not such a green thumb, and she's really happy with it. So highly recommend them. They're great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So another question. So what are some questions or concerns we encounter about setting up an irrigation system correctly for the yard that you have? Setting up an irrigation system correctly for the yard you have. Well, one thing I was talking to Doug earlier about is that when you're going to start a project, you may want to think about where your irrigation zones are at. And that might help you decide if you just want to expand an existing bed or if that zone splits a walkway, it might be kind of complicated to just turn off half of that zone because it may not water your lawn on one side. So you may have to do the whole entire zone in a project. Just thinking about where your water is available and how you're going to get it to what part of the project you want to get it to is a challenge a lot of the times.
One thought that I have is that it's important to break up your irrigation zones into areas that need to be watered differently, right? So if you have a really shady part of your yard that might not need very much water and the soil retains the moisture, that's going to need to be watered differently than, say, the south side of your yard where it gets a lot of sun, and you might need a deeper watering, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I know when I was new to doing irrigation at my house, I thought I'd take all that on, and I put my whole entire front yard as one zone, and it's very, very different from one side to the next. And so one side, I time it for, say, it runs 20 minutes. Well, this side needs twice as much water as the other side. So yeah, I've learned from mistakes that I've made, definitely setting up my own system. I wish I would have changed that, but yeah. So you learn a lot of things as you go, and that's why you have professionals like yourself to go out there and help people do it right the first time. Yeah. So another question was, when would you recommend drip irrigation?
That's a good question. So drip is great if, if you want to target individual plants with your irrigation. If you're not trying to water the entire lot, that's really probably the best scenario for drip. You can water big grids with a drip system. I think it's more work, and it's maybe not the best application for drip.
Right.
But so if you, I think that's probably it. If you're trying to conserve water, you're trying to get water to each individual plant.
Yeah, and I run into a lot of folks in maybe some of the older parts of town that don't have in-ground drip or in-ground systems at all, and they don't want to invest in the money to, because they may just have the faucets on the side of their house, and they don't want to invest in the money to actually put in an in-ground system. If you have an existing system, it's easy to convert it to drip, or it's less expensive. But for me, I know I'm out of town a lot in the summer playing, try to make the most of my weekends. And so it's great just to have it on a schedule, knowing that it's going to water my plants and I don't have to go down there and drag a hose around and take times in the evening to do that. So it just really depends how much you want to, how much money you have to invest in a drip irrigation system, and how much free time you have. Some people find it pretty therapeutic to go out in their front yard with a hose after work and check on their plants and water them, and that's great for them. It just really depends on people's personal preference and maybe finances as well.
What if you hook it up from the hose bib?
Yeah, you can definitely hook up systems from hose bibs, and that's a pretty simple way to do it. You just put a splitter on, and we have a great diagram on our website about proper order of a drip system. So that's definitely an easy way to do it as well, and a pretty inexpensive option for installing drip. We do have rebates for that. Yeah, we have great rebates. You can get a rebate for a smart irrigation controller, but they also make smart irrigation controllers that are applicable to hooking up to your faucet for a drip system. So you can get a rebate for those, and they're way better than the ones you'd buy in the hardware store that are a little more old-fashioned. And they have an app you can program it on your phone, so that works really well. We have rebates for somebody that's going to convert a lawn spray system into a drip system for their Spokanescape program. That's $200. So that sweetens the pot a little, and you can get $500 for a Spokanescape project for the max for 1,000 square feet. So potentially $800 worth of savings for doing a project. So that can add up. So Doug, any final advice for Spokanescapers out there, or people doing Xeriscape projects in their front yard? Any closing thoughts?
Let's see. Yeah, I guess I'd wrap up by saying think before you start digging. Call people if you have questions, and have fun. Don't make it too much work, right?
Right.
It's supposed to be fun. Enjoy the outdoors, and enjoy your investment, really, in your own little piece of nature. I mean, that's what a lot of this is really about for me, is bringing bringing nature a little bit closer to home, and so have fun picking out plants, and just go out there and get dirty.
That's great advice. Yeah, I know from just the work that I've done at my house, it's really changed our landscape in our yard, and we have tons of great fruits and veggies in our yard that we can just go out and pick at night, and we harvest and freeze a lot of food, and it brings us a lot of joy, and I don't really know that my lawn ever brought me any joy, so no. So definitely converting over to a drought tolerant landscape, it can really change your kind of your daily routine, and also bring in some great fruits and veggies into your home, and organic, right? So that's nice too. Yeah. So go out there and get started on your next Spokanescape project, and you can contact Doug with Second Nature Landscaping if you need any help getting started, or to have him come do the hard work you don't want to do.
That's right.
So how can people find more information about Spokanescape planning? You can go to spokanescape.org on our website. There's lots of great resources there. How can people contact Doug?
I mean, you can. Let's see. The best way to contact me is my phone number, 999-8104. I have a website. It's secondnaturewa.com, and you can find me on Spokanescape too.
And there's also tons of other great resources on our website, as well as lots of other Spokanescape certified professionals that can help you out, help you get started on your project. All right, thanks for having us, everyone. We appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll see everybody again soon.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for having me.
Of course, Doug. Thanks.